When Naomi Turner accepted a simple housekeeping job at the Whitmore estate, she never imagined her quiet world would collide with forbidden desire. But when millionaire Caleb Whitmore chose her, a humble black housekeeper, over the elite socialites surrounding him, their shocking connection ignited whispers, jealousy, and dangerous threats that would test everything she believed about love and worth. What started as stolen glances across marble floors became a battle between two worlds, where society's expectations clashed with matters of the heart. As powerful women plotted to tear them apart and family loyalty hung in the balance, Naomi faced an impossible choice: protect her heart by walking away, or risk everything for a love that could either elevate her or destroy them both. But the most devastating betrayal was yet to come, and it would change everything she thought she knew about the man she was falling for. If you're captivated by this forbidden love story, subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Whitmore estate, casting gentle shadows across the marble floors. Naomi Turner moved through the grand foyer with quiet efficiency, her soft-soled shoes making barely a whisper against the polished stone. She'd been working here for 8 months now, and the routine had become second nature. The vacuum hummed softly as she worked her way through the sitting room. Fresh flowers needed arranging. The Persian rugs required careful attention. Every surface had to gleam. Mrs. Patterson, the head housekeeper, expected nothing less than perfection. "Morning, Naomi?" The voice made her look up. Caleb Whitmore stood at the bottom of the curved staircase, adjusting his tie. At 29, he carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from old money, but his eyes held a kindness that surprised people. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his suit probably cost more than Naomi made in a month. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore." She kept her voice respectful and pleasant, always professional, always appropriate. "Beautiful day," he said, glancing toward the windows. "Looks like the rain finally stopped." "Yes, sir. Very pretty outside." He paused, as if he wanted to say something more, then simply nodded and headed toward the kitchen. Naomi watched him go, noting how he walked with purpose but never seemed rushed. Everything about Caleb Whitmore was measured, controlled, private. She returned to her work, moving the vacuum carefully around the antique furniture. The Whitmore estate felt like a museum sometimes, beautiful, expensive, but strangely empty of real life. Caleb lived here alone, except for the staff who came and went like shadows. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 times. Naomi checked her watch and picked up her pace. Mrs. Patterson would be arriving soon for the weekly staff meeting. There was talk of an important dinner party this weekend, something that had everyone on edge. As she folded the vacuum cord, voices drifted from the kitchen. Caleb was on the phone, his tone businesslike but patient. She caught fragments of the conversation, something about quarterly reports and board meetings. The world he lived in was so different from hers. Naomi had grown up in a small apartment across town. Her mother, Ruth, cleaned houses to pay the bills. Money was always tight, but love never was. Ruth had taught her daughter to work hard, keep her head up, and never apologize for who she was. "You got gifts," Ruth often said. "Smart mind, good heart, strong hands. Don't let nobody make you feel small." The job at the Whitmore estate had been a blessing. The pay was better than anything else she could find, and the work itself wasn't difficult. She just had to remember her place. Mrs. Patterson's voice echoed from the service entrance. "Naomi, staff meeting in 5 minutes." She gathered her supplies and headed to the small conference room off the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson was already there, a stern woman in her 60s who ran the household like a military operation. Sarah, the part-time gardener, sat nervously in one corner. Tom, the groundskeeper, checked his phone. "Friday evening," Mrs. Patterson began without preamble. "Mr. Whitmore is hosting a dinner party. 8 guests, all very important people. Everything must be perfect." She handed out assignments. Sarah would handle the flowers. Tom would ensure the grounds looked immaculate. Naomi would assist with serving and cleanup. "These are not ordinary guests," Mrs. Patterson continued. "Society people, wealthy families, the kind who notice everything." Her eyes fixed on Naomi. "Professional behavior at all times. You serve quietly, efficiently, and you do not draw attention to yourself." Yes, ma'am, Naomi replied. The guest list includes Miss Marianne Cole, the Ashford sisters, and Mrs. Victoria Banks. These women move in the highest circles. They expect excellence. Naomi nodded, already feeling the familiar knot in her stomach. Fancy dinner parties made her nervous. Too many ways for things to go wrong. Too many eyes watching. After the meeting, she returned to her cleaning routine. The afternoon passed quickly as she polished silver, arranged fresh linens, and helped Sarah prepare the dining room. The long mahogany table gleamed under the crystal chandelier. Everything looked perfect. Around 4 o'clock, she was dusting the books in Caleb's study when he appeared in the doorway. "How are the preparations going?" he asked. "Very well, sir. Everything should be ready on time." He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets. "This dinner party wasn't my idea," he said quietly. "My aunt thought it would be good for me to socialize more." Naomi wasn't sure how to respond to this personal admission. She kept dusting, moving carefully around his desk. "Do you enjoy your work here?" he asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "Yes, sir, it's a good job." "But do you enjoy it?" She paused, really looking at him for the first time. His gray eyes seemed genuinely curious. "I like keeping things nice," she said honestly. "I like when everything is clean and beautiful. It feels peaceful." Something shifted in his expression. "Peaceful. Yes, I can understand that." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then, Mrs. Patterson's voice called from downstairs, and the spell was broken. "I should get back to work," Naomi said. "Of course." As she headed for the door, he spoke again. "Naomi." She turned back. "Thank you for making this place feel like a home." The words stayed with her as she finished her tasks, making this place feel like a home. She'd never thought of it that way before, but maybe that's what she'd been doing all along. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Delivery trucks arrived with flowers, wine, and specialty items for the evening's menu. The house hummed with preparation. Mrs. Patterson directed operations like a general commanding troops. Naomi spent the morning in the kitchen, helping the catering staff arrange serving pieces and polish glasses. The menu sounded fancy, things with French names she couldn't pronounce. Everything had to be elegant, refined, impressive. "Remember," Mrs. Patterson said as they set the table, "these women are used to the finest things. They'll notice if a fork is in the wrong place or if there's a fingerprint on a glass." The afternoon flew by. Naomi changed into her formal serving uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron that made her feel like she was wearing a costume. She practiced moving quietly, carrying trays without making noise, being invisible. At 6:30, the first guests arrived. Naomi watched from the kitchen window as elegant cars pulled up the circular drive. Women emerged wearing designer dresses and jewelry that probably cost more than her rent. They moved with the confidence of people who had never doubted their place in the world. Marianne Cole was the first to enter the house. Tall, blonde, and stunning, she wore a red dress that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Her laugh was musical, her smile perfect. She hugged Caleb like they were old friends, maybe more. The Ashford sisters followed, twins who looked like they'd stepped out of a society magazine. Mrs. Banks arrived with her daughter, both carrying themselves with the kind of poise Naomi had only seen in movies. "Showtime," Mrs. Patterson whispered. Naomi took a deep breath and picked up the first tray of appetizers. She had learned to move through fancy parties like a ghost, seen but not noticed, present but not intrusive. She offered food with a quiet smile, refilled glasses without being asked, and stayed in the background. The conversation flowed around her in waves. Talk of charity galas and vacation, homes, business deals, and social events. These people lived in a world where problems could be solved with money and connections came from family names. Caleb stood near the fireplace, looking handsome but somehow distant. Marianne stayed close to his side, touching his arm when she laughed, looking up at him with obvious admiration. The other women circled like beautiful birds, each trying to catch his attention. "Caleb, you simply must come to the Hamptons this summer," one of the Ashford sisters was saying. "Daddy's having the most wonderful parties." "We could sail to Martha's Vineyard," Marianne added, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Just like old times." He smiled politely, but Naomi noticed it didn't reach his eyes. He looked like he was playing a role, saying the right things, being the perfect host. but something seemed missing. As she moved through the room collecting empty glasses, conversations paused around her. Not rudely, but with the kind of automatic discretion people used around staff. She was part of the scenery, necessary but forgettable. "Naomi," she turned, surprised to hear her name. Caleb was looking at her directly, ignoring the conversation around him. "Could you bring more of those wonderful appetizers, the ones with the herb sauce?" It was a simple request, but every eye in the room turned to her. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Of course, sir." As she headed to the kitchen, she caught fragments of whispered conversation behind her. "Who is that?" "Just one of the staff." "Pretty girl." "Caleb seems to know her name." Mrs. Patterson was waiting in the kitchen with a stern look. "What was that about?" "He asked for more appetizers." "He used your name." "Yes, ma'am." In front of the guests. Naomi felt like she'd done something wrong, but she wasn't sure what. "He was just being polite." Mrs. Patterson studied her face. "Be careful, child. These people notice everything, and they talk." The warning settled uneasily in Naomi's stomach as she arranged fresh appetizers on a silver tray. She had always been careful to maintain professional boundaries. She did her job well, kept to herself, and never forgot her place. But something about the way Caleb had looked at her, the way he'd used her name so naturally, felt different. She returned to the dining room just as everyone was sitting down for dinner. The table looked magnificent. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, silver gleamed against white linen, and flowers from Sarah's garden created elegant centerpieces. Naomi served the first course with practiced efficiency, moving around the table without disturbing the flow of conversation. Marianne had somehow ended up seated to Caleb's right, and she was telling an amusing story about a mutual friend. Everyone laughed on cue. "Remember when we went to that awful restaurant in Paris?" she said, touching Caleb's hand. "The one your cousin recommended? We should have known better than to trust Jeremy about food." "I remember you sent back 3 different entrees," Caleb replied with a smile. "Well, standards matter," Marianne said. "That's what Mama always says. Never settle for less than you deserve." As Naomi cleared the soup bowls, she noticed how easily these people talked about trips to Paris, family connections, shared memories. Their lives were woven together by money, tradition, and expectations. Caleb belonged to this world in a way she never could. During the main course, the conversation turned to business. Mrs. Banks was involved with some charity foundation. The Ashford sisters talked about their father's real estate empire. Everyone seemed to know everyone else, connected by invisible threads of wealth and influence. "Caleb, when are you going to settle down?" Mrs. Banks asked with motherly concern. "A man in your position should have a wife, someone suitable to help with social obligations." All eyes turned to him. Marianne looked particularly interested in his answer. "I'm not in any hurry," he said diplomatically. "The right person is worth waiting for." "The right person is sitting right beside you," one of the Ashford twins said with a laugh, nudging Marianne. Marianne blushed prettily, but didn't disagree. As Naomi served dessert, she tried to imagine what it would be like to sit at this table as a guest instead of as staff. To wear designer clothes and talk casually about trips to Europe, to belong to this world of privilege and power. The fantasy felt impossible. After dinner, the guests moved to the sitting room for coffee and brandy. Naomi began clearing the dining room, stacking plates carefully and collecting the expensive silverware. The work was familiar and soothing, something she could do without thinking. "Quite a spread," Tom said, helping her carry dishes to the kitchen. "These folks sure know how to live." "Different world," Sarah added, arranging leftover flowers in a smaller vase. "Must be nice, never having to worry about money." Naomi nodded but didn't comment. Growing up, she'd learned that some things were better kept to yourself. Opinions about rich people definitely fell into that category. In the sitting room, laughter drifted through the open doors. Someone was playing piano. Marianne, probably, showing off another accomplishment. The melody was classical, complex, beautiful. As Naomi finished loading the dishwasher, Mrs. Patterson appeared with final instructions. "The guests will probably stay another hour. Keep the coffee service ready and make sure the powder room stays stocked with towels." The evening wound down slowly. Gradually, guests began making their goodbyes. Cars appeared in the driveway, engines running quietly while chauffeurs waited. Air kisses were exchanged, promises to call soon, invitations extended and accepted. Marianne was the last to leave. Through the kitchen window, Naomi watched her embrace Caleb at the front door. The hug lasted a long moment, and when they separated, Marianne said something that made him laugh. She looked up at him with obvious affection before finally getting into her car. After the house grew quiet, Naomi finished the final cleanup. Her feet ached and she was tired, but there was satisfaction in restoring order to the elegant rooms, everything back in its place, ready for tomorrow. She was wiping down the dining room table when Caleb appeared in the doorway. "You don't have to do that," he said. "The catering company will handle the rest tomorrow." "I like to finish what I start," she replied, continuing her work. He walked into the room, loosening his tie. "The evening went well, don't you think?" "Everyone seemed to have a nice time." "Did they?" He seemed genuinely curious about her opinion. "Sometimes it's hard to tell. People are very good at being polite." Naomi paused in her cleaning. This felt like another one of those personal conversations, the kind that made her unsure of the boundaries. "Miss Cole seems very fond of you," she said carefully. He was quiet for a moment. "Marianne is a good friend. We've known each other since childhood. She's beautiful." "Yes, she is." Something in his tone made her look up. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You worked very hard tonight," he said. "Everything was perfect. I wanted to thank you personally." "Just doing my job, sir." "Caleb," he corrected gently. "When we're alone like this, you can call me Caleb." The offer hung between them, unexpected and somehow dangerous. Using his first name would change something, cross a line she wasn't sure she should cross. "Thank you," she said instead, not agreeing, but not disagreeing either. He smiled slightly as if he understood her hesitation. "Get some rest, Naomi. You've earned it." As he left the room, Naomi felt something shift inside her chest. The way he'd said her name, the genuine gratitude in his voice, the offer to use his first name, it all felt too personal, too intimate for an employer and his housekeeper. She finished cleaning and gathered her purse from the kitchen. The house felt different in the quiet, larger somehow, but also more intimate. As she walked to the service entrance, her footsteps echoed softly in the empty halls. Outside, the night air was cool and fresh. Her old Honda looked small and shabby next to where the fancy cars had been parked earlier, but it was hers, and it would get her home to her small apartment where everything was simple and familiar. Driving through the quiet streets, she replayed the evening in her mind. The elegant guests, the perfect dinner, the easy way they all fit together in Caleb's world. And underneath it all, the strange moments when he'd looked at her like she was more than just staff. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How was the fancy party, baby?" "Long but good. Home soon. I'll leave the porch light on." Ruth Turner still worried about her daughter working late, even though Naomi was 26 and perfectly capable of taking care of herself. But there was comfort in having someone who cared, someone who waited up to make sure she got home safely. As she pulled into the parking lot of her apartment complex, Naomi tried to push the strange feelings aside. Caleb Whitmore was her boss. He was kind, but kindness didn't change the facts. He lived in a mansion, and she lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. He traveled to Paris, and she shopped at discount stores. He was surrounded by beautiful, sophisticated women who belonged in his world, and she was just the housekeeper who made his home feel peaceful. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she couldn't forget the way he'd looked at her when he said her name, like she mattered, like she was worth seeing. Maybe Mrs. Patterson was right to warn her to be careful, because for the first time since she'd started working at the Whitmore estate, Naomi found herself wanting something she had no business wanting. She found herself wondering what it would be like to be chosen. The morning after the dinner party brought an unusual quiet to the Whitmore estate. Naomi arrived at her usual time, but the house felt different somehow, like the elegant evening had left an invisible mark on everything. She started her routine in the sitting room, where last night's gathering had begun. The furniture had been returned to its usual arrangement, but she could still picture Marianne Cole standing by the fireplace in her red dress, commanding attention with her perfect smile. "Morning, Naomi." She turned to find Caleb in the doorway, coffee cup in hand. He looked more relaxed than usual. No tie, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly mussed. Almost normal, if someone like Caleb Whitmore could ever be called normal. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore." "Caleb," he corrected gently, the same way he had last night. She felt that familiar flutter of uncertainty. "Good morning, Caleb." His name felt strange on her tongue, too personal, but he smiled like she'd given him something precious. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," she resumed, dusting, trying to maintain some professional distance. "I hope your guests enjoyed the evening." "They did, though I think you worked harder than any of us." He sipped his coffee, watching her move around the room. "Marianne asked about you." Naomi's hand stilled on the bookshelf. "About me?" "She wondered how long you'd been working here. Said you seemed very capable." The pause before capable suggested Marianne had used a different word. Naomi could imagine what it might have been. She'd seen the way the elegant woman had looked at her, not unkindly, but with the sort of casual assessment wealthy people gave to anything that might affect their world. "I hope I didn't do anything wrong," Naomi said. "Wrong?" Caleb seemed genuinely surprised. "What could you have done wrong?" "Mrs. Patterson mentioned that some of the guests noticed when you used my name." Understanding crossed his features. "Ah," he set down his coffee cup and moved closer. "Naomi, you did nothing wrong, nothing at all." "But nothing," he repeated firmly. "I used your name because it's your name. Because you're a person, not a piece of furniture." The conviction in his voice made her look up. There was something almost angry in his expression, but not at her. "These people," he said quietly, "they're used to thinking of staff as invisible, but that doesn't mean I have to." Before she could respond, Mrs. Patterson's voice echoed from the kitchen. Caleb stepped back, and the moment broke. "I should let you work," he said. "But Naomi? Don't worry about what anyone thinks. You belong here as much as anyone." After he left, those words stayed with her. You belong here as much as anyone. It was a nice thought, but belonging wasn't just about someone saying you belonged. It was about fitting, about having a place that felt natural and right. The next few days passed normally. Caleb left early for business meetings and returned late. Mrs. Patterson maintained her usual standards of perfection. The house settled back into its quiet routine. But something had changed. Caleb seemed to notice her more, asking how her day was going, commenting on her work, making small talk that went beyond mere politeness. It felt dangerous and wonderful at the same time. On Wednesday afternoon, she was arranging flowers in the front hall when the doorbell rang. Through the glass panels, she could see a familiar figure in an expensive coat. "I'll get it," Mrs. Patterson called, but Naomi was closer. She opened the door to find Marianne Cole standing on the front steps, perfectly put together despite the autumn wind. "Hello," Marianne said with a bright smile. "You're Naomi, aren't you? From the dinner party?" "Yes, miss. Mr. Whitmore isn't home right now, but I can take a message." "Oh, that's fine. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." Marianne glanced past her into the house. "Such a beautiful home. You must enjoy working here." "Yes, miss. I'm sure Caleb is a wonderful employer. He's always been so considerate." The word carried a weight that made Naomi uncomfortable. "How long have you worked for the family?" 8 months. "And before that?" The question felt intrusive, but Marianne asked it with such friendly curiosity that refusing to answer would seem rude. "I worked for a cleaning service," Naomi said. "How nice that you found something more permanent." Marianne's smile never wavered, but something sharp glittered in her eyes. "Caleb values loyalty, you know. He appreciates people who understand their place in his life." The comment landed like a gentle slap, polite on the surface, but with an unmistakable message underneath. "I'll tell him you stopped by," Naomi managed. "Thank you, dear." After closing the door, Naomi stood in the hallway feeling unsettled. The conversation had been perfectly proper, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just been warned about something. That evening, Caleb returned home later than usual. Naomi was finishing up in the kitchen when he appeared, looking tired. "Long day?" she asked. "Board meeting that went on forever." He loosened his tie and sat down at the small table where staff sometimes ate their meals. "Any messages?" "Miss Cole stopped by this afternoon." Something flickered across his face. What did she want? She said she was in the neighborhood, just wanted to say hello. Marianne doesn't have neighborhoods, he said dryly. She has destinations. The comment surprised a laugh out of Naomi. That's not very nice. But it's accurate. He studied her face. What did you two talk about? Not much. She asked how long I'd worked here, where I worked before. Naomi hesitated, then added, She mentioned that you value loyalty. Caleb's expression darkened. Did she? I think she was just making conversation. No, he said quietly. Marianne never just makes conversation. Everything she says has a purpose. Before Naomi could ask what he meant, Mrs. Patterson entered the kitchen to discuss the next day's schedule. The moment passed, but the word stayed with her. Everything she says has a purpose. What had been the purpose of Marianne's visit? And why did Naomi feel like she'd become part of some game she didn't understand? The answer came Friday evening. Naomi was working late, polishing silver in the dining room, when she heard voices from Caleb's study. The door was slightly ajar, and she couldn't help overhearing. Need to be realistic about this, Caleb. The voice belonged to an older woman, Evelyn Whitmore, Caleb's aunt, who occasionally stopped by to discuss family business. I'm being perfectly realistic, Caleb replied. Are you? Because from what I hear, you're developing an unfortunate attachment to someone completely inappropriate. Naomi's polishing cloth stilled in her hands. I don't know what you've heard, Caleb said carefully, but my personal life is my own concern. Not when it affects the family reputation. Marianne is worried about you. She thinks this girl might be taking advantage. Stop. The single word cut through the air like a blade. Just stop right there. Caleb, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but you have to consider how this looks. A wealthy young man, a pretty housekeeper. You don't know anything about her. I know enough. I know she's not suitable for someone in your position. Suitable? Caleb's voice held bitter amusement. Like Marianne is suitable? Marianne would make you an excellent wife. She understands your world, your obligations. She could be a real partner in what? Charity galas and country club dinners, empty conversations and arranged marriages? The pain in his voice made Naomi's chest tight. That's not fair, Evelyn said. Marianne cares about you. She's been patient, waiting for you to see what's right in front of you. What's right in front of me, Caleb said slowly, is someone who sees me as a person, not a bank account or a social opportunity. You're talking about the housekeeper. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Naomi felt heat flood her cheeks, even though she was alone in the dining room. I'm talking about someone who matters to me, Caleb said. Someone I'd like to get to know better if she'll let me. This is temporary infatuation, nothing more. You'll realize that soon enough. Will I? Yes, because you're not foolish enough to throw away everything you've built for someone who could never truly be part of your life. The conversation continued, but Naomi couldn't listen anymore. She gathered her cleaning supplies and slipped away, her heart pounding. Someone who could never truly be part of your life. The words echoed in her mind as she finished her work in other parts of the house. Was that really how people saw her? As someone temporary, unsuitable, impossible? And what did Caleb see when he looked at her? That night, she lay awake thinking about the conversation she'd overheard. Part of her was touched by the way Caleb had defended her, but another part was terrified by what it might mean. He'd said she mattered to him, that he wanted to get to know her better. But wanting something and having it were two different things, and she'd learned the hard way that sometimes the wanting was all you got. The next morning brought an unexpected test of her resolve. She was cleaning the guest bathroom when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but she recognized the voice immediately. Naomi, this is Marianne Cole. I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the household directory. Miss Cole? Is everything all right? Oh, everything's fine. I was just wondering if you might have time for coffee this afternoon. I have something I'd like to discuss with you. Every instinct Naomi had screamed danger. I'm not sure that's appropriate, miss. Please, call me Marianne, and there's nothing inappropriate about two women having a friendly conversation. I promise I won't keep you long. Before she knew it, Naomi had agreed to meet at a small cafe near the estate. She spent the rest of the morning wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The cafe was quiet when she arrived, tucked away from the main shopping district. Marianne was already there, elegant even in casual clothes, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffee cups waiting. "Thank you for coming," Marianne said as Naomi sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "What did you want to discuss?" Marianne smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Caleb. I don't think— Please, hear me out." Marianne leaned forward, her expression earnest. "I've known Caleb since we were children. Our families have been friends for generations. I care about him deeply." "I'm sure you do." "I'm worried about him," Marianne continued. "He's been through some difficult relationships in the past. Women who were interested in his money, his status, but not really in him." Naomi felt like she was walking through a minefield. Every word could explode in her face. "He's vulnerable right now," Marianne said softly. "Lonely. And sometimes when people are lonely, they make choices that aren't in their best interest." "Miss Cole?" "Marianne, please." The woman's voice was gentle, almost motherly. "I'm not trying to interfere. I just want to make sure Caleb doesn't get hurt." "What does this have to do with me?" "I think you know." Marianne sipped her coffee, watching Naomi carefully. "He's developed feelings for you. Anyone can see that." The direct statement hit like a punch to the stomach. "I don't know what you mean. Don't you?" Marianne's smile was sad. "Naomi, you seem like a lovely person. Hard-working, honest, genuine. But you have to understand, this situation can't lead anywhere good." "I haven't done anything wrong." "No, you haven't. That's what makes this so difficult." Marianne reached across the table, covering Naomi's hand with her own. "But think about what happens next. Where does this go?" The question Naomi had been avoiding crashed over her. Where did it go? What future could there possibly be for a millionaire and his housekeeper? "He lives in a world where appearances matter," Marianne continued, "where people judge every choice, every relationship. He may think he doesn't care about that now, but eventually he will. And when that happens—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "When that happens, you'll be the one who gets hurt." "I care about you too," Marianne said softly. "Which is why I'm hoping you'll make the right choice." "What choice?" "Step back, before this goes too far, before either of you gets hurt." Naomi pulled her hand away. "You're asking me to quit my job. I'm asking you to protect yourself, and to protect him from making a mistake he'll regret." The words stung because they contained just enough truth to be believable. Caleb would regret choosing her. Eventually, when the novelty wore off and reality set in, he would see what everyone else saw, that they didn't belong together. "I need to think about this," Naomi said. "Of course." Marianne's smile was warm now, victorious. "Take all the time you need, but don't wait too long. These situations have a way of getting complicated quickly." As Naomi drove home, Marianne's words replayed in her mind. Make the right choice, step back, protect yourself. Maybe it would be the smart thing to do. She'd been hurt before by someone who'd made her feel special, then changed his mind when something better came along. Maybe Caleb was different, but maybe he wasn't. And maybe caring about someone meant protecting them from their own mistakes. That evening, she called in sick for the first time since she'd started working at the estate. She needed time to think, to figure out what she really wanted and what she was willing to risk. But as she sat in her small apartment, staring at the phone, she realized the decision might already be made. Because for the first time in 8 months, the thought of not seeing Caleb tomorrow felt like losing something precious. And that terrified her more than anything else. 20. The weekend passed in a haze of uncertainty. Naomi told herself she was coming down with something, which wasn't entirely untrue, since anxiety had settled in her stomach like a persistent ache. She stayed in her small apartment, avoiding her mother's concerned calls and trying not to think about what was happening at the Whitmore estate. But Monday morning came anyway, and with it, the decision she could no longer avoid. She arrived at work 15 minutes early, hoping to slip back into her routine before anyone noticed she'd been gone. The house felt the same. Elegant, peaceful, expensive, but something had shifted inside her. She moved through the familiar rooms like a stranger, seeing everything with new eyes. "Feeling better?" Mrs. Patterson asked when Naomi appeared in the kitchen. Much better, thank you. Good. Mr. Whitmore was asking about you. The words sent a flutter through her chest that she tried to ignore. Oh? Seemed concerned when you called in sick. Asked if you needed anything. Mrs. Patterson's sharp eyes studied Naomi's face. That man has a kind heart, but kindness can be dangerous sometimes. Before Naomi could ask what she meant, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Caleb appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed for business but with his tie loose and his hair slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it. Naomi. Relief flooded his voice. Are you all right? Mrs. Patterson said you were sick. Just a small bug. I'm fine now. He studied her face with the intensity of someone trying to read between the lines. You look tired. I'm fine, she repeated, but her voice came out smaller than intended. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat meaningfully and disappeared into the pantry, leaving them alone in the sudden quiet. I was worried, Caleb said softly. 3 simple words that shouldn't have meant so much, but they settled into her heart like warm honey, making her forget all the reasonable arguments about why this was impossible. You don't need to worry about me, she managed. Don't I? He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that made her think of safety. Because I do worry. I worry that something's bothering you and you won't tell me what it is. The directness of his words caught her off guard. This was dangerous territory, too personal for an employer and employee. But the concern in his gray eyes made it hard to maintain professional distance. Mr. Whitmore? Caleb. Caleb. His name still felt strange on her tongue. Everything's fine. I should get back to work. But as she moved toward the door, his voice stopped her. Have dinner with me tonight. The invitation hung in the air between them, impossible to ignore. Naomi turned back, her heart hammering. I don't think that's appropriate. Why not? Because she struggled for words that wouldn't reveal too much. Because I work for you. So we're both adults. We can have a meal together. People would talk. What people? His voice carried an edge of frustration. The only people here are Mrs. Patterson, Tom, and Sarah, and frankly, I don't care what they think. But I do, Naomi thought, because when this ends, and it will end, I'm the one who'll have to live with the whispers. I appreciate the invitation, she said carefully, but I don't think it's a good idea. Something shifted in his expression. Naomi, what's really going on? Friday you seemed different, and now you won't even look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Nothing's going on. I'm just trying to do my job. Is that all this is to you? Just a job? The question hit like a physical blow. Because no, it wasn't just a job anymore. Somewhere along the way, this house had become the place she looked forward to being. These rooms had become comfortable and familiar. And he had become... Yes, she lied. It's just a job. Pain flashed across his features so quickly she almost missed it. Then his expression closed off, becoming politely distant. Of course, he said formally. I apologize for overstepping. He left the kitchen without another word, leaving Naomi alone with the echo of her own deception. She'd done the right thing, protected them both from a situation that couldn't end well. So why did it feel like she'd just thrown away something precious? The rest of the week passed in careful politeness. Caleb spoke to her when necessary, always professional, always proper. The warmth in his voice was gone, replaced by the same courteous distance he showed to all the staff. This is what you wanted, Naomi told herself. This is safer. But safety felt a lot like loneliness. On Thursday afternoon, she was dusting the library when she found herself staring at the chair where Caleb usually sat to read. She'd seen him there countless evenings, lost in thought or absorbed in a book, looking more relaxed than he ever did during the day. Sometimes he'd glance up when she passed, offering a small smile that made her feel like she belonged in his quiet world. Now that chair sat empty, and she realized she hadn't seen him reading there all week. Naomi, Mrs. Patterson's voice startled her from her thoughts. There's someone here to see you. To see me? In the front hall, says she's your mother. Panic shot through her. Ruth Turner never came to the estate. Ever. If she was here, something was very wrong. Naomi rushed to the front hall to find her mother standing near the door, looking small and out of place in the grand foyer. Ruth was dressed in her best clothes, a simple black dress and cardigan that Naomi recognized from church. But even her Sunday best looked shabby against the marble floors and crystal chandelier. "Mama, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, baby." Ruth's worried eyes searched Naomi's face. "But you're not." "What do you mean?" "You haven't called all week. When you did answer your phone, you sounded sad. Then today you missed lunch without even letting me know." Ruth's voice carried the gentle firmness that meant business. "So I decided to come see what's going on." Naomi glanced around nervously. Mrs. Patterson had disappeared, but staff had a way of materializing when you least expected them. "Can we talk outside?" she asked. They walked to a small garden bench beside the fountain, far enough from the house to have privacy. Ruth sat down and patted the space beside her. "Now," she said once Naomi was seated, "tell me what's got you looking like somebody stole your favorite sweater." Despite everything, Naomi almost smiled. Her mother had a gift for reducing complicated problems to simple metaphors. "It's nothing, Mama, just work stuff." "Uh-huh." Ruth studied her daughter's face with the keen perception of someone who'd been reading her moods for 26 years. "This have anything to do with that man?" "What man?" "The one who owns this place, the one you talk about without meaning to." Heat flooded Naomi's cheeks. "I don't." "Baby girl, you mention him in every conversation. Mr. Whitmore said this, and Mr. Whitmore did that. Your voice gets soft when you talk about him." "He's my employer." "And?" The simple question hung between them. Ruth had always been able to see through her daughter's defenses with embarrassing accuracy. "And nothing," Naomi said weakly. "Try again." The kindness in her mother's voice broke down the last of Naomi's resistance. I think he might have feelings for me." "Might?" "Does. He asked me to have dinner with him." "And?" "I said no." Ruth was quiet for a long moment, watching the water cascade from the fountain. "Why?" "Because it's impossible, Mama. Look around." Naomi gestured toward the estate. "This isn't my world. These aren't my people." "Whose people are they?" The question confused her. "Rich people, society people, people with fancy names and old money." "And what makes them different from you?" "Everything. Money, education, background." "You've got a college degree," Ruth interrupted. "You're smart, kind, hard-working. You've got more class in your little finger than most folks have in their whole body." "That's not enough." "For who? For him or for them?" Naomi thought about Marianne's gentle warning, Evelyn's dismissive words, the way the dinner guests had looked through her like she was furniture. "For everyone," Ruth sighed. "Baby, can I tell you something?" Naomi nodded. "When your daddy left, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough. Not pretty enough, not smart enough, not whatever enough. I spent years believing that lie." Pain squeezed Naomi's chest. Her father had walked out when she was 8, leaving Ruth to raise their daughter alone on a housekeeper's salary. "But you know what I learned," Ruth continued. "A man who can't see your worth isn't worth having, and a man who can see it won't care what anybody else thinks. This is different, Mama." "How?" "Because," Naomi struggled to put her fears into words, "because someday he'll realize what everyone else sees, that we don't match, and then what? I'll be the housekeeper who forgot her place." Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up and dusted off her dress. "You know what your problem is, Naomi Turner." "What?" "You're so busy worrying about what other people think that you forgot to ask yourself what you want." Before Naomi could respond, Ruth was walking back toward the house. "I'm going to go say hello to this man of yours," she announced. "Mama, no!" Naomi jumped up, panicked. "You can't just watch me." Ruth Turner might have been small in stature, but she moved with the determination of someone who'd fought for everything she had. Naomi hurried after her, dreading whatever was about to happen. They found Caleb in his study, working at his desk. Mrs. Patterson must have told him about the visitor, because he looked up when they appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Whitmore?" Ruth stepped forward with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her right to exist in any space. "I'm Ruth Turner, Naomi's mother." Caleb stood immediately, his manners automatically kicking in. "Mrs. Turner, it's a pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure's mine." Ruth studied him with the frankness that made Naomi want to disappear into the floor. "I hear you've been kind to my daughter. She's an excellent employee." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." Heat flooded Naomi's face. "Mama, please." "Hush, baby. The grown folks are talking." Ruth never took her eyes off Caleb. "My daughter thinks she's not good enough for you." "Mrs. Turner," Caleb said carefully, "I'm not sure this is appropriate." "Oh, it's not," Ruth agreed cheerfully, "but appropriate never solved anything important. So let me ask you straight. Do you have feelings for my girl or not?" The direct question hung in the air like a challenge. Naomi wanted to run from the room, but her feet seemed rooted to the floor. Caleb glanced at Naomi, then back at her mother. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but certain. "Yes, I do." Ruth nodded like she'd expected nothing less. "And what are you planning to do about it?" "I was hoping to take her to dinner, but she declined. Because she's scared." "Mama," Naomi protested. "Am I wrong?" Ruth asked, turning to face her daughter. "You care about him too, don't you?" The question hung between them, impossible to avoid. In the silence, Naomi could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Caleb's eyes on her face. "Yes," she whispered, the word barely audible. But it was enough. Something shifted in Caleb's expression, hope replacing the careful distance he'd maintained all week. Ruth smiled. "Well, that settles it then. You two need to have that dinner." "It's not that simple," Naomi said. "Sure it is. He asks, you say yes, then you go eat food and talk to each other like human beings." Ruth looked between them with the satisfaction of someone who'd solved a puzzle. "Unless you're both too stubborn to be happy." Before either of them could respond, she was headed for the door. "I'll see myself out. You two figure this mess out." And then she was gone, leaving Naomi and Caleb alone in the sudden quiet of the study. The silence stretched between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Naomi stood frozen by the doorway, her mother's words still echoing in the room. Caleb remained behind his desk, but his careful composure had cracked, revealing something raw and uncertain underneath. "Your mother is direct," he said finally. "She's always been that way." Naomi's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I'm sorry she put you on the spot." "Don't apologize." He moved around the desk, shortening the distance between them. "She said what we've both been dancing around for weeks." "Caleb, you care about me." The words weren't a question. "You just admitted it." Heat flooded her cheeks. "That doesn't change anything." "Doesn't it?" He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of green in his gray eyes, could smell the subtle cologne that always made her feel safe. Too close. Not close enough. "It changes everything," she whispered. "Then have dinner with me." The invitation hung between them, simpler now, but somehow more weighted with possibility, because this time they both knew what it meant. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Do what?" "Be anything other than your housekeeper." Something tender crossed his features. "You've never been just my housekeeper, Naomi. Not to me." Before she could respond, voices drifted from the hallway, Mrs. Patterson directing someone toward the kitchen. The spell broke, and reality crashed back. "I should get back to work," Naomi said, stepping toward the door. 7 o'clock, Caleb said quietly. She paused without turning around. "What?" "Dinner, 7 o'clock. Not in the dining room, somewhere neutral, somewhere we can just be ourselves." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Caleb, just say yes, Naomi, please." The please undid her. She turned back to find him, watching her with an expression so hopeful it made her chest tight. "Yes," she whispered. His smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Yes?" "Yes." And for the first time in days, breathing felt easy again. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of nervous energy. Naomi went through her cleaning routine on autopilot, her mind spinning with questions she couldn't answer. What did you wear to dinner with your employer? How did you act? What did you talk about? At 5 o'clock, Mrs. Patterson appeared in the sitting room where Naomi was arranging fresh flowers. "You can go home early today," she said. "I'm not finished. You're finished enough." The older woman's expression was unreadable. "Mr. Whitmore said you have plans this evening." More heat in her cheeks. Soon everyone would know about the dinner, and the whispers would start. But maybe Ruth was right. Maybe she was so worried about what other people thought that she'd forgotten to consider what she wanted. "Mrs. Patterson?" Naomi set down the flowers. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends what it is." Do you think I'm making a mistake? The question seemed to catch Mrs. Patterson off guard. She studied Naomi's face for a long moment before answering. Child, I've been working in houses like this for 30 years. I've seen employers who treat staff like dirt, and I've seen employers who treat them like family. Mr. Whitmore is the latter. But this is different. Is it? Mrs. Patterson moved closer, lowering her voice. That man has been living in this big house like a ghost since I started working here. Polite, proper, and lonely as a stone. Then you came along, and he started smiling again. You think the other staff want to see him happy, same as me. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. But what I think doesn't matter. What do you think? The question echoed her mother's words. What did she think? What did she want? I think I'm scared, Naomi admitted. Good. Smart people get scared when something matters. Naomi drove home in a daze of anticipation and terror. Her small apartment felt even smaller than usual as she stood in front of her closet trying to figure out what to wear for dinner with a millionaire. Her options were limited. Work clothes, casual clothes, and one good dress she'd bought for church. Nothing that felt right for whatever this was supposed to be. She was still staring at her clothes when her phone rang. How did it go? Ruth's voice was warm with curiosity. You can't just do that, Mama. Do what? Ambush people like that. It was mortifying. Did it work? Despite everything, Naomi found herself smiling. Maybe. Told you so. Now what are you wearing? I don't know. I don't have anything nice enough for. For what? For being yourself? For dinner with someone like him. Baby girl. Ruth's voice carried the gentle firmness that meant a life lesson was coming. You know what makes a woman beautiful? Confidence, kindness, being comfortable in her own skin. You've got all of that. But no buts. Wear something that makes you feel like yourself. If he's worth your time, that'll be enough. After hanging up, Naomi chose a simple blue dress. Not fancy, but it fit well and made her feel confident. She did her hair in loose waves and applied just enough makeup to feel polished without looking like she was trying too hard. At exactly 7 o'clock, her doorbell rang. She opened the door to find Caleb standing on her small front porch, looking completely out of place in the modest apartment complex. He'd traded his business suit for dark jeans and a button-down shirt, but somehow he still looked expensive. Hi, he said, and she caught a hint of nervousness in his voice that made her feel better. Hi. You look beautiful. The compliment was simple, sincere, and it settled into her heart like a warm stone. Thank you. You look different. Good different, he smiled. I was going for approachable. Mission accomplished. They stood there smiling at each other until Naomi realized she was still standing in the doorway. I should get my purse. Of course. She grabbed her bag and locked the door, hyper-aware of him waiting beside her. His car was parked in front of her building, something sleek and black that probably cost more than she made in a year. Where are we going? She asked as he opened the passenger door for her. Somewhere we can talk without feeling like we're being watched. The restaurant he chose was small and warm, the kind of place where the tables had checkered tablecloths and the servers had worked there for decades. Nothing fancy, nothing intimidating, just good food and quiet conversation. How did you find this place? Naomi asked as they were seated at a corner table. I used to come here with my grandfather when I was little. Before he died, before the money became complicated. There was something wistful in his voice that made her look at him more carefully. Complicated how? When you have money, people treat you differently. They want things from you, or they assume things about you. It gets hard to tell who likes you and who likes your bank account. The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Naomi realized this was the first time he'd talked about the money as anything other than a simple fact. Is that why you don't date much? She asked. Partly. He fidgeted with his napkin. The women in my social circle, they're all perfectly nice, but I always feel like I'm playing a role with them, being the person they expect me to be instead of who I actually am. Who are you actually? The question seemed to surprise him. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that before. I'm asking now. He was quiet for a moment, considering. I'm someone who'd rather read than go to parties. I like old movies and terrible jokes. I worry too much about disappointing people. I want to matter for something other than my last name." The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. "You do matter. Do I? Or do I just matter because I can write checks? You matter because you're kind, because you see people, really see them, because you make your house feel like a home even when you're the only one living in it." Something shifted in his expression. "Is that really how you see me?" "Yes. Even though I'm rich and you're not?" The blunt question caught her off guard. "Is that what you think this is about? The money?" "I don't know what to think. You keep pulling away from me, and I can't figure out why." Their server appeared with menus, giving Naomi a moment to gather her thoughts. When they were alone again, she met his eyes directly. "It's not about the money, Caleb. It's about everything else." "Like what?" "Like the fact that you belong to a world I'll never understand. Like the fact that people are already talking about us. Like the fact that someday you might realize what everyone else sees, that we don't make sense together." "What if I don't care what other people see?" "You will eventually." "How can you be so sure?" The question hit her like a physical blow, bringing back memories she'd tried to bury. "Because I've been here before." "What do you mean?" She took a shaky breath. "There was someone, a few years ago. Marcus. He was a lawyer at the firm where I cleaned offices. Smart, successful, charming. He made me feel special, like I mattered, like maybe someone like me could be with someone like him." Caleb leaned forward, his attention completely focused on her. "We dated for 6 months," she continued. "He told me he loved me. Said it didn't matter that we came from different worlds. Then his firm offered him a partnership, and suddenly it did matter. He said he needed someone who could help his career, someone who fit better with his professional image. Naomi. He wasn't cruel about it. He was actually very kind. Said I was wonderful, but we wanted different things. Said I'd understand someday." Her voice broke slightly. "The thing is, I did understand. I understood perfectly." Silence stretched between them. When Caleb finally spoke, his voice was quiet and fierce. "I'm not him." "How do I know that?" "Because I'm sitting in this restaurant with you instead of at some country club with Marianne Cole. Because I've spent the last week miserable without you. Because when your mother asked if I had feelings for you, I couldn't lie even though it would have been easier." The conviction in his voice made her look up. His gray eyes held something she was afraid to name. "I know you're scared," he said softly. "I'm scared too. But what if we're both wrong? What if this could actually work?" Before she could answer, their server returned to take their order. The interruption gave her time to think, to really look at the man sitting across from her. He could have chosen someone safe, someone from his world who would never challenge the careful order of his life. Instead, he was here, in a small restaurant that meant something to him, trying to convince her to take a chance. "Tell me about your grandfather," she said when they were alone again. The change of subject seemed to catch him off guard, but he went with it. "He was nothing like the rest of my family. Came from money but never acted like it mattered. He used to sneak me away from formal dinners and bring me here for grilled cheese sandwiches." Caleb's smile was soft with memory. "He said the best conversations happened over simple food." "He sounds wonderful." "He was. He died when I was 16, and I've been trying to live up to his example ever since." Caleb paused. "He would have liked you." "How do you know?" "Because he valued substance over style. Because he always said the measure of a person wasn't what they owned, but how they treated people who couldn't do anything for them in return." The words settled into her heart like a benediction. Maybe Ruth was right. Maybe she was so worried about what other people thought that she'd forgotten to trust her own judgment. Their food arrived, comfort food that reminded her of Sunday dinners with her mother. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily. He told her about his grandfather's advice, about feeling lost in a family that valued appearances over authenticity. She told him about growing up with Ruth, about learning that love was something you did, not something you said. "Your mother is remarkable," he said as they shared a piece of chocolate cake. "She'll like hearing that. She was impressed with you too." "Really?" "She said you have honest eyes." "What does that mean?" "That you don't try to hide who you are behind what you have." Something vulnerable crossed his features. Is that enough? For you, I mean? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and fear. Naomi looked at this man who had somehow become precious to her, really looked at him, past the expensive clothes and careful manners to the person underneath. What she saw was someone as uncertain as she was, someone willing to risk everything for the possibility of something real. Maybe, she whispered. His smile was like dawn breaking over mountains. Maybe is better than no. Don't get too excited. Maybe is still pretty scary. Scary I can handle. Scary means it matters. As he drove her home, Naomi felt something shifting inside her chest. Not certainty. She wasn't sure she'd ever have that. But possibility. For the first time since Marianne's warning and Evelyn's dismissal, she allowed herself to imagine a future where this could work. He walked her to her door, and they stood on her small porch in the glow of the streetlight. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "Thank you for asking. Can I ask again? Soon?" She studied his face, memorizing the hope in his eyes. Yes. Yes? Yes. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gentle touch that felt like a promise. "Good night, Naomi." "Good night, Caleb." She watched him drive away before going inside. Her apartment felt different somehow, smaller but also warmer, like she was seeing it through his eyes. Like maybe it was enough, just as it was. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How did it go?" "Good, really good." "Told you so. Love you, baby girl." "Love you too, Mama." As she got ready for bed, Naomi caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked the same as always, but something in her eyes was different, brighter, more alive. Maybe Ruth was right. Maybe the measure of a person wasn't what they owned or where they came from, but how they treated the people who mattered to them. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to find out what it felt like to matter to someone who mattered to her.